Hello internet, and today is going to be another one of those book opinions, those videos in which I tell you my opinion on a book. And today's book is going to be A Daughter of Spoken Bones book 2, Days of Blood and Starlight, right? I think that's what the name is called. This is by Laini Taylor. This is the second book in a trilogy, so if you want to hear my opinions on the first book, go check that book opinion out. But we're going to be talking about the second book. So the second book, again, I think two of the main saving graces for me ever getting through this series, and especially this massive book right here, this second book, is the fact it was an audiobook, so I couldn't easily skip over everything that I was irritated with, and two, because Laini Taylor does have a good handle on writing in a way that captivates her audience. However, I think she needs to work on her plot devices some. So this continues with the story of Karou. She's already figured out that she is a chimera as well, but she's the first fully human chimera because she has been resurrected in a human body, and Brimstone did this because he loved her and he wanted to give her a new lease on life, one without the pain of being a chimera. And she finds out why she died, what happened, and in the first book, and now she's finally back in the chimera world. She's finally witnessing all the things that Akiba has told her that has happened, and she has to deal with the fact that she was indirectly involved with it, right? And she is depressed, like she's hopeless. She doesn't see any future in sight, and we're slowly seeing this buildup of the Chimera War and the Cephalon War coming to its final moments. Because where we ended in the first book was the Cephalon had finally made one last stand to kill the Chimera sorcerer, to take away their power of resurrection, to take away their only chance of ever standing up in this battle. And now these angels are coming in and destroying all of these villages, all of these people, and they don't have any hope anymore. And it was just like a really, like, it was strong on the war part. I like that. I did. Okay, objectively, we're going to talk about objective things that I liked first. I liked the talk of war. I liked the emotions, the feelings, the tension, the stress, all of that went into this, that made you feel like this was a real war. Not like the sense of like wars we see, but that this could be a war that someone could experience. Like that these were people that were being destroyed, and that corruption existed and was the hopelessness. Like you could feel the hopelessness in these people and the desperation that they had and the willingness that they had to do anything that they could to ensure the survival of their various chimera species and races. And it was just so fascinating and so intense and just like emotional, and there was angst, and there was just like all this like high tensed emotion. But then we get to the part where I didn't like. Things that I didn't like, okay? These are gonna come off as spoilery, so yeah, most of this video is just gonna be me complaining about things that I think Laini Taylor failed in her story and the very glaring holes that it has. You could still enjoy the story either way. It still has beautiful writing. It's still a very compelling story. However, here are some of the big holes that I think really draws back her story from being as great as it could be. One, she uses this common plot device. It starts in this second book, where I like to call it the dun 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 plot device. It's where a writer ends a chapter on a cliffhanger, where they basically explain to you everything that could happen in the future, but don't tell you that it happens. They leave it in the back of your head. You thinking, oh, this thing could happen. This is what's gonna happen, right? Basically foreshadowing so hard, but then leaving you on a cliffhanger so you never figure out if that really hard foreshadowing is what actually happens. And the way Laini Taylor does it is like she tells you, she builds you up to this climax in a chapter, and in the next chapter she switches to a different point of view that is on a different storyline where they're halfway across on the other world dealing with other characters. So then you're just like, what? You're like, it's like someone's holding you at gunpoint, but then you like just knock out real quick so you don't know if you like gonna wake up or not. So then you get into another chapter, right? And then this next chapter, and you're like really angry because you're like, I need to know what happens to the characters in that last chapter. But then you start getting hooked by her use of language in this compelling story that it slowly starts seeping into the back of your head. So now you're invested in like this new half of the story. And then that does the same thing and leaves on a cliffhanger. But then in the following chapter after that, you go to the ones from the previous one and you find out what was happening there. But now you're still angry because now that you know what the end of result of that previous cliffhanger is, you have a new cliffhanger to worry about, and you never get a chance to breathe. And then I started to realize slowly, after this kept happening over and over and over again, and I was like, I'm not getting a chance to breathe. And then I'm like, why am I even feeling hopeless? Because like, I feel like this was intended so that the reader would feel as hopeless as the characters are, because after this happens enough times, you start not thinking that these characters are gonna come through. You start to like be tricked that these characters might not come out of these things okay. But slowly, after watching those cliffhangers be answered a couple of chapters later, you start to realize that this is just a trick to keep you in this hopeless atmosphere, because Laini Taylor never has the guts to actually do anything lasting and horrible to her characters that truly makes you furious and makes you sad. Because at the end of the day, nothing horrible happens to them. The potential for horror, yes. And then we build up that potential, we lay it aside for a little bit, and then everything turns out okay. Like, not perfect, right? They still have some hardships, but it turns out okay. There's a few times where I'm okay with this method. It's like when Thiago and Carew get involved, and then there's that one chapter and it leaves on that cliffhanger, and then we come out, but ends out Carew's okay. Like, I was good with it there. And if you've read it, you probably know why I was good with it. But in every other case, I was like, Laini Taylor, honey, you gotta kill someone. Kill someone important so that I feel like this war has lasting impacts. Because there's only been like one important death so far. Like, one person who has been killed that I was attached to, and that person was one that I was attached to personally, not because they were built up. I don't know, it, like Brimstone, that spoiler, it was Brimstone. I really love Brimstone. We never see Brimstone again, and every other character that dies isn't one that you resonate and love in this book. So I'm just like, why am I feeling so hopeless all the time? Like, this war has real consequences, when every time we leave on this dun dun dun, it turns out that the gun was a water gun and I wasn't really getting shot. Like, nothing horrible happens. So that was the biggest problem, is that books like this, books where it's supposed to be high tense stress situations where something horrible and tragic is supposed to happen, some people need to suffer and die so that you can feel that full impact. Otherwise, it's just cheap. It's just a cheap book. I'm sorry, but that's what it is. Those books are supposed to rip out your heart. They're supposed to make you cry or feel bad or just like feel something other than frustration that she keeps putting your heart on the line only to disappoint you, and it turns out your heart was fine the whole time, so you had no reason to worry at all. Another big problem I had with this was the worst Carew ever was in this whole series. So the first half of the book, until one pinnacle point, Carew is just a moping, whining baby. So if you watched my last video, you noticed that I commented a lot that if Carew had just listened to Brimstone, she'd be a lot better off. And this is why, is because of this book and the major chunk of how Carew acts in this book, where she starts wallowing in pity because she's like, I was indirectly involved in the murder of Brimstone and the murder of all these chimeras because I indirectly helped Akiva, and Akiva betrayed my trust, and he helped the other angels because he's an angel, and this forbidden love thing, and if only I hadn't bothered, then none of this horrible stuff would happen. And I'm just like, did you not remember all these important things that Brimstone has taught you? That he's taught you that the most important thing is to keep hopeful, that magic isn't made out of teeth, that real magic isn't made out of teeth, it's made out of hope. Have you forgotten the meaning of your name, that it's Karoo? Have you forgotten that he told you that you should never let a kindness that you do someone else be something that you are ashamed of? You should never be ashamed of helping and saving someone else's life, even if that someone ends up wronging you and wronging someone else, because that isn't on you, that's on them. And you should never, never hate yourself for being a good person. And just all these things, and like him saying like, you and Akiva are good, you're good for each other, you're good, like we don't feel ashamed of you, that you're loved, no matter what happens, no matter what consequences happen because of your love, because there's nothing wrong with loving someone. There's nothing wrong with hoping for a better future, for hoping for a better life for yourself and for others, for dreaming of one day where you don't have to fight and almost die all the time. But she forgets all of these lessons and she wants to wallow, and she ends up with horrible people and helping horrible people out of this wrong sense of duty instead of figuring out a proper way to help. And all of her helping the wrong people ends up getting her and a lot of other people in some deep shit. And I just wish she listened to Brimstone. And another thing that I really couldn't understand, and I'm not fully comprehending this. So we find out like Karoo has been resurrected again in this human body, but she had a previous chimera form, and this is the chimera form that Akiva and her originally got together in, and this girl had all these memories from this form. I think that was Marigold. So Marigold, and now she's Karoo. She ends up getting back all her Marigold memories that Brimstone locked away because he wanted her to have this new life without all the atrocities that come along with war and with being a chimera and being like constantly attacked. So she gets them all back, and what I don't understand is why these memories have no effect on her actions other than her occasionally pulling on one or two of these memories, because it seems like Marigold knew the price of war. She knew the horrible actions of others. She was naive, but she wasn't ignorant of everything going around her, and she was a really strong warrior. But Karoo is nothing like that. So I was really confused because I was like, do these memories have no bearing on Karoo? Because when you resurrect, you don't forget everything that happened in your past body. It's still you. It's still all of this. So I didn't understand why getting back her memories didn't change her into like a Marigold Karoo hybrid. It just seemed like Karoo, but with random access to Marigold sometimes if she wanted to remember something. But it never seemed like she was once again Marigold. She was like this brand new person, which like I guess is fine, but it still really confused me. I didn't know why she could have access to the memories, but those memories and experiences didn't change her to something more than just Karoo. Because I was tired of dealing with just Karoo, and I wanted a little bit of Marigold the Warrior Queen to sprinkle in so that Karoo could stop being so stupid and buck it up. So those are my biggest problems with this book. One, the high-tense situations that falter, where there are no consequences at all to any of these characters. So it's constantly putting you on this like high pinnacle like situation and then just dropping it and nothing horrible happens. So you're constantly in this perpetual fear that something terrible is going to happen to these characters you've grown attached to, but then are rewarded with nothing happening to them, and then are slightly disappointed because you just spent all that time worried, and it turns out you didn't have to worry for anything, and soon you start to become desensitized and you're just like, why am I worrying that they're gonna die, because I know they're not gonna die, and then you're a little disappointed because there's no consequences to any of the actions. So what's the point if you know everyone's gonna come out and there's no point of really worrying about any of the characters you love? Like half of the fun of putting your characters in high tense situations is that you kind of get scared that they're not gonna make it out. And so when they don't make it out, like you're really sad, but you're just like, yes, that author did it. She broke my heart. And you're kind of really proud of them, right? That's one thing I've always loved about J.K. Rowling, is that she always knew when to kill someone off. Like, it's such a sad thing. And as much as I hate some of the deaths that happened there, I've always respected her for it, because she put her characters in horrible, high tense situations in which they were super, super dangerous, and not everyone came out unbruised, rolling away like James Bond. So I was good. But it doesn't happen like that with Laini Taylor. Everything is consequence free, so there's no real point about worrying. The other half that I was just really disappointed about was like Karou and her wallowing and pitying, and the fact that she never took any stock in her father figure's words and all the words he told her. And she constantly remembered them. That's how I know all of these things that Brimstone told her. It's because she keeps remembering them. And I'm like, you think Brimstone's gonna be disappointed in you? Didn't he just tell you in this memory that you supposedly had that he would never be disappointed in this? Why are you still wallowing? You're disappointing him by wallowing and not doing anything. So, yeah. After like the first half of the book, where before that little turning point where Karou actually gets her things together and starts behaving in a respectable manner. I wasn't there for the book. Slowly after that, it started getting better. I think the war escalated in a good speed. Again, the no consequences thing was really, really frustrating. The fact that characters that you loved, you knew would never come to any dangers, so there's no really point worrying. So that, like, that just took some of the joy out of, like, the reading experience in a high tense situation out of the whole thing. So yeah, this was also the book in which the angst got to a point where I just started getting frustrated with it. Like in the first book, the angst and them not being able to talk, or them just wallowing, or them just like trying to figure out what's going on, like Akiva's angst, those were okay, right? I was like there for like the bleeding heart sort of idea. But the angst in this book, I was just like wanting to slap them. I was just like, psh, get your shit together. Psh, get it together now. Psh, you're being dumb. Don't you understand that this is not the time for you to be angsty? This is a time for you to either have a conversation and move on, or let it go. Because nobody has time for your bullshit. Like, yeah, Days of Blood and Starlight was my least favorite of all the books. It was unnecessarily angsty in some points. It really introduced that dun 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 concept. It really introduced the zero consequences, and a lot of the times there was just a lot of things that could have easily been avoided if these characters just talked to each other. Like, misdirection and miscommunication is like a plot point sometimes, and it shouldn't be. I feel like as a writer, if you have to use miscommunication to further your plot, you're not doing a good job. And sometimes the angst getting in the way of them just like talking to each other, even when they were fully capable, was too frustrating for me to handle, or just them being introspective and trying to think through their situations and using those gorgeous brains in their head and stop wallowing. Those frustrate me. I can't stand a character who doesn't even try to use their brain outside of wallowing. I don't like those characters, and this book was a really hard time for me because of that. I mean, I ended up loving all the characters in the end, but I ended up getting super frustrated with most of them for that very same reason. So those are all my opinions on the second book in the trilogy of Daughter and Smoke and Bone, on Days of Blood and Starlight by Laini Taylor. I hope that everything I said made sense. I'm always kind of worried that I go off on tangents and I stumble too much, that it doesn't really make sense. But I hope that if you've either watched this video and you haven't read it, or you've watched this video and you have read these books, that you got something out of it. I hope it wasn't too spoilery, but I hope it made just enough sense that you could kind of put pieces together to why I had problems. If you want to read this book, I highly suggest it. I do think that Laini Taylor's writing does bring this book up more than it would be if she was a terrible writer. I do think that if you're really, really particular about your plot, then don't go into this book, because there are just things that happen with the plot devices and the plot devices she uses, from those dun-dun-duns to the miscommunications to the superior angst, that just gets a little tiring after a while, especially for a book that is super big. So go in it at your own risk. I can't say much more than that. And if you like what you're seeing here and you want to continue seeing more, click all those bunnies down below, and goodbye, internet.